Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about fabric. Just plain fabric, not hand-dyed fabric. I thought I would go over different types of fabric, different counts, how many strands you use, what needles you use, what 2/2 means, all that good stuff. And my dog is playing with a toy on the floor, so if you hear growling, chewing, that's her. Okay, I'm going to go from lowest count to highest count. The first piece I have is 14 count Aida. 14 count Aida is 100% cotton fabric. And my favorite 14 count Aida is Picture This Plus for hand dyed, because it is the softest Aida that's out there. Now, there are people that will use 3 strands of floss on 14 count Aida. I use 2 and I'm okay with the coverage. I'm going to stitch a couple stitches and I'm going to show you. Now, I would normally use a size 24 needle with 14 count Aida. I don't have a 24 right in front of me, so I'm using a 26. Aida also comes in 16, 18, and 20 count. Now, 16 count, I would still use 2 strands. 18 count, I would use 1 strand, but there are a lot of people that like to use 2 strands because it gives full coverage. And then on 20 count, I would also do 1 strand. So I'm just going to hold this like this. Wait, we get to that higher count fabric where it's like 1/1. Yeah. 14 count Aida is fantastic to work on because there isn't as much counting involved as there is with evenweave. I currently have an ink circles project on Aida, and you know what? And when I'm done stitching these stitches, I am going to pause the video and grab it and show you guys, because it is on Picture This Plus fabric. I'll just do 5 stitches. I'm sure many of you watching this have stitched on Aida and know what this is. Okay, to me, Aida that is not hand dyed is actually very, very stiff. Sometimes that can be a good thing though. It makes your stitches much more uniform the stiffer your fabric is. But it is nice to work on softer fabric for me, like evenweave. I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna grab my project. Okay, one thing I also meant to say about 2/2, 2/1. On 14 count Aida, technically when you use 2 strands, you are stitching 2/1. What that means is you are using 2 strands over 1 fabric thread. If you use 3 strands on 14 count Aida, you are doing 3/1. 3 strands over 1 fabric thread, or a fabric square. You can see squares. You can call them squares or threads or whatever you call. Okay. The project on the Aida. I have to take my pattern off because I have it stuck to it with my needle minder. This is Ink Circles Dark Shards. And this Aida is 14 count Heroic by Picture This Plus. You can see my coverage. I am just using 2 strands of floss. Now yes, you can see some of the fabric through the darker strands, but far away, it looks amazing. No one's looking at the fabric very close up once it's hung on the wall. So there is that, and this is like baby soft. Okay. The next fabric is 25 count Jobelan. 25 count fabric is very popular with Heaven and Earth designs because you stitch one strand over one. You're going to see me do that. I would also use a size 28 needle on 25 count fabric. And I use these. I use the John James needles, tapestry. So let me get a strand. I have not stitched on 25 count fabric and I couldn't tell you the last time. Will I even be able to thread this? Yes. Okay. And with fabric too, and I forgot to say this, 14 count Aida. That means there are 14 squares per 1 inch of fabric. 25 count Jobelan. There are 25 squares per inch of fabric. So let's see me do. Now, this is actually not hard to see, I have to admit. But when you're doing a HAID and, oh, I just pulled that right out. I didn't realize my thread was that short. When you are stitching all those colors that those HAIDs are, 90 colors is the minimum, I think, unless you're doing more of a black and white. It can get very tiny and tedious. And as you'll see when I show you the 28 count fabric I have, there are people that will stitch 1 over 1 on that. Crazy! No. Whole lot of nope on that. It's a whole lot of nope on this 25 count fabric. I'm just doing this to show you guys how small and tiny these stitches are. You know my tried and true. 28 count Lugana. 2 over 2. I am going to do 2 more stitches. I'm amazed I'm even doing this. Good lighting. Good lighting helps people. Invest in a daylight lamp if you can. Or I even have a clip-on Mighty Bright light. You know, I need to also do a video on like my stitching tips and tricks and the stuff that I use. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, 1 more square, 1 more stitch. Look how tiny these are. I'm going to show it up against the Aida. And there's an ant crawling across the piece of Aida. That's lovely. Do you guys have ants? Summer's over. Bugs need to go back to hell where they belong. Okay. .25 count Jobelan. I'm going to fold the fabric and put it side by side with the Aida so you can see. I mean, look at that. Look how tiny that is compared to the 14 count. Okay. 25 count also comes in Lugana. Jobelan is really, really soft, and I think the Lugana is too. Okay, next, 28 count Jobelan. This was my favorite fabric for many, many years of stitching. I stitched all of the lavender and lace Celtic ladies on this. I stitched a ton of projects on this. A lot of the stuff I have hanging on my walls is on 28 count or 32 count Jobelan. 28 count Jobelan is 51% cotton, 49% rayon, and it has more of a sheen than Lugana, as you'll see when I show you the Lugana. Now, I've also meant to say you can do fractional stitches on Aida. It's difficult, it's not impossible. I did many fractional stitches when I stitched the mermaid just recently on Aida that I had bought from Hand Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie. You just have to pierce the center of the square. It is much easier on even weave to do fractional stitches because you have more holes. You're working in a square of 9 holes. So it's much easier to do those fractional stitches. Now, on 28 count Jobelan, like I said, you can do 1/1. I'm not stitching that again. But most people do 2/2. 2 strands over 2 fabric threads. Which if you watched my even weave video, one square, one complete X is a set of 9 holes. And I'm gonna just do 2 or 3 stitches here so you can see. And my thread came out of the needle. Jesus. I would not even believe how much that happens to me. Happens a lot. Too much for my taste. Okay, where were we, right? And stitching 2/2 on 28 count Jobelan gives you the same size as stitching on 14 count Aida. Because you do 28 divided by 2, you get 14.
I'm just gonna do a couple more, just these 3 stitches.
Okay, you can see, yeah, that looks just like the stitches I did on the Aida. I'm going to leave this up there because next is the 28 count Lugana. My favorite fabric because I can easily see the holes. If you look at this up against the Jobelan, and I hope you can see that. Let me try to hold it up a little closer to the camera. This has more of a sheen to it, and you can easily see the holes in the Lugana. That is why, as I get older, I'm 43, that is why I love 28 count Lugana. And as far as hand dyed, it has a subtle dyeing, a subtle modeling on it versus linen. So that's another reason why I like Lugana. Lugana is 52% cotton, 48% viscose. So it's a different makeup even than the Jobelan. I also forgot to mention that there is a 22 count hardanger fabric. I did not buy any of that. I would have gotten a small cut if I would have thought about it. I've never done hardanger, so I've never worked on that count fabric. But yeah, so there's that. Okay. You know, I'll do a couple stitches on that Lugana to show you. Now, obviously, doing 2/2 on the 28 count Lugana is going to give you the same size stitches as I just did on the Jobelan. Wow, you people that stitch in hand, I give you props. I hate stitching in hand like this with no Q-snap or frame or something. No. Whole lot of nope on that too. I actually started a project last night on 28 count Lugana, but it's really small, so I actually put it in a hoop, if you can believe that one. Man, I just love this fabric though. It's so easy to work with. Highly recommend it. And I find that it's harder for me to make my stitches uniform when I'm holding my fabric in my hand like this. Well, first of all, when you have your fabric in a scroll frame, in a hoop, in a Q-snap, it is holding it taut, which gives your fabric, it gives your stitches a more uniform appearance. Okay, so yeah, you can see, same size. Okay. Next fabric is linen, 28 count casual. This is 100% linen. I've also stitched a bunch of projects on this. And I probably should have brought one over, because I'm looking at my wall and I think I stitched a Lizzie Kate Thanksgiving string on it. That would have been nice to show you examples, huh? Okay, you know what? I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to grab that project to show you. Okay, this is the Lizzie Kate Thanksgiving string, and this is on, is it? I'm pretty sure it's on casual linen. I loved stitching this project using Weeks Dye Works threads. Okay, here is the linen. I will do a couple stitches to show you what it looks like. Again, 2/2. This is also nice linen to work with. I actually do not mind working on this. The one thing I hate about linen are slubs, are the fact that it's uneven. Like, see that right there? I'm like OCD about that. I have a project here that I will show you where I stitched on linen and I cut slubs and I cut a hole in my fabric. So what I had to do was I put a button there, and I'll show you because I have that as to show you as an example. But yeah, this is, if you like linen, 28 count, this is awesome to work with. It's almost as awesome as Lugana. But for me, I love hand-dyed fabric, and hand-dyed fabric dyes so much darker on linen. I like the way it dyes on Lugana. Okay, there's that. Same size as the 28 count Lugana, the 28 count Jobelan. Okay. Next fabric is 30 count Weeks Dye Works linen. This fabric for me is really hard to work with. It's flimsy, I don't know, you can really see through it. You can't really see through that piece very well, but it is just very flimsy and does not have, I hate it. But I've stitched a bunch of projects on it. And Weeks Dye Works also comes in 20 count for some colors, and it comes in 40 count because I'm going to show you, and 35. I would also do 2 strands over 2 on this. Actually, let me just do a couple so you can see. Now this fabric is a little bit harder to see because of the color. Got my eyes. I'm only going to do like 3 stitches on this, because I have examples of what it looks like, because I stitched a bunch of projects on it way back in the day. You know what, forget it. I'm not even going to stitch on that. I can hardly even see those holes because of that color. Okay, but I stitched Lizzie Kate's Eek Boo Hiss. This is 30 count Weeks Dye Works in chestnut, and I had, you can see this is dark. I had really good lighting when I did this. And it's a set of 3, and this is actually the recommended fabric. So that's what that looks like. I also stitched Little House Needleworks, I think it was just called Vanilla and Chocolate. This is 35 count Weeks Dye Works. I did 1 strand over 2. I really liked stitching this one. It only called for 3 colors. It was very easy to work with. And then when I was crazy, no, I'm teasing. I'm still crazy. I did some projects on 40 count Weeks Dye Works. 1 strand over 2. This is actually really dusty. This is Little House Needleworks Miss Peepers. Love this. I don't remember. I think the color of the fabric is linen. But yeah, I did that. And then the thing I was talking to you about where I cut the slub and cut a hole in my fabric was this. This is part of the Country Cottage Needleworks pie series. Right here where these buttons are were 2 giant holes. So luckily I was able to find buttons that seemed to fit with plants and the project. And I had planned to do, I think it's 6 cakes that were in the series. I wanted to do all 6. I got burnt out after 2. I also did strawberry. So yeah, I have stitched on just about every count fabric that is out there. So next is 32 count linen. This is very stiff. Like you can see, I move it, it doesn't bend or anything. This would be hideous to stitch on, I think. But your stitches would probably look really nice and neat. And there are people that love this. I'm not trying to say that people stitch on this aren't good people or aren't good stitchers. You stitch on whatever makes you happy. And boy, do we have some choices. I mean, there's tons of fabric out there, people. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple stitches. I think this scratchy fabric would also wear out your thread. Because when you're pulling your thread through, you're putting strain on your thread. I'm just going to do a couple stitches here. Should be in the camera, right? I was off camera. And there are some people too that like to do heaven and earth designs on this, and they stitch 1 over 1. Crazy. No. Whole lot of nope on that. I could barely see the holes to stitch on 2 over 2. Okay, there's that one. The next one I have is 36 count linen from R&R Reproductions. This linen is actually pretty nice. I don't have a finished project on this linen, but I think I have started 1 or 2 on it. They come in mostly sampler colors like tans and browns. And I just thought that I probably should have been telling you the price. Okay. I do have a price list behind me that I'll go down the line at the end and tell you. On this, I would stitch 1 strand over 2, but there are plenty of people that would do 2 strands over 2 because it is going to give you really, really good coverage. But for me, it looks too tight and cramped. So let me get some thread here. Going to put 1 strand in there. You're going to see what 1 strand over 2 looks like. This is actually really nice fabric to stitch on. It's not bad. And it does still give good coverage with just 1 strand. It gives good enough for me, I should say. Now, I will go back and I will do 2 strands. I will show you what that looks like on that fabric. And companies like Shepherd's Bush, they do almost all of their kits in silk and on linen, and they actually do a lot of theirs on 32 count linen, and they only use 1 strand over 2. because sometimes silk can be thicker and it can give really good coverage with just one strand. This is actually looking really good, the 2 strands. But yeah, it's a little bulky for me. Okay, yeah, there you can see the coverage is much, much better with 2 strands versus just 1 strand. Okay, the last fabric I have to talk about is 40 count Newcastle linen. Like I said before, and I showed you, Weeks Dye Works makes 40 count linen, and I loved it at one time. It's all I stitched on. That was like 8 years ago though. Tiny. And you know, they had, I don't know if they had any small cuts, because I got these small cuts of fabric at Salty Yarns when I was there. They have like 52 and 56 count linen. No. I saw it. No. No, 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 no. This is really tiny. You do 1 strand over 2, which makes this 20 count. So let me get some thread and do a couple stitches for you. And then I'll go through the price list of what all of this stuff costs, you know, at 1, 2, 3 stitch. I just came up in a hole. I didn't even look. Wow, this is tiny. Good night. Whew. I think stitching on this, I would complete each X as I go along, whether it was over dyed thread or not, so I would not lose count and I would not have to go back. I think I came up, no, that was the right hole. I'm just going to do one more. Tiny, tiny little stitches. Okay, let's go through the price list real quick. 14 count Aida, and I priced all of these at a fat quarter, which is usually 18 by 27. 14 count Aida is $7.48. 28 count Jobelan is $10.92. 28 count Lugana is $11.39. 28 count Cashel linen is $16.60. 30 count Weeks Dye Works linen was $21.84, and that's the most expensive because it's hand dyed. 32 count linen, just that plain piece that I had showed you, $19.47. The 36 count linen by R&R Reproductions was $26.59, and that's also hand dyed, so that's why that price is like that. And then the 40 count Newcastle linen was $17.07. I hope this was helpful to show you guys the different counts of fabric and what's out there. I have 2 more tutorial type videos coming up at some point. One, I'm going to show you different types of metallic thread and how they stitch up. And then I am also going to do a really short video on hand-dyed fabric. I'm going to show you one color of dye, how it dyes on Aida, Lugana, linen, because it dyes very differently on all of those fabrics. So stay tuned for those at some point, probably next week maybe. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video.